Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Charity Charge Show. Today, we are pleased to be joined by Shane Scott. He is the Regional Director of Development for Kids Alive International, and they are helping provide identity based, trauma informed care for
Yes.
kids throughout the globe. Shane, thank you so much for joining and sharing more about the work and mission you're doing out there. I'll let you take it from here.
Well, it's actually a pleasure to be with you, Grace. And I was very excited at the opportunity to come and share and to speak to my fellow laborers in nonprofit and the work that we're doing. It's a very important task that we're about and how we're trying to lean in that way. And anything I can share over the almost quarter of a century that I've been doing this type of work, I'd love to be able to offer that to others who are in this work. Because in the trenches, it's hard. It's hard work that we're doing, but we're grateful for those who come alongside and support us. And then also being creative in ways that we can create sustainability for what we're doing and the services we provide. So love to be with Kids Alive and just being able to serve in that capacity.
That's incredible. Tell me a little bit more about the work that you are looking to achieve around the globe and also how your role fits into that at Kids Live International.
So, Kids Alive International is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We are Christian based, and that influences all we do, how we serve, and what we go about. And we come alongside youth who have been impacted by sexual abuse, usually abandonment or neglect. And we come
Mm,
along with a holistic, multidisciplinary care team. In that team, it's made up of a social worker to really kind of address some of the situations that happened in family that resulted in any of these things taking place, a mental health therapist to walk with that child and that family, actually, to get back to a healthy place and process through the trauma that they're dealing with. And then, when necessary, and often cases this does happen, we have lawyers that actually come in and prosecute the offender. So we're working in a holistic way to bring that support. And this is all based on, we have four global goals at Kids Alive. The first one is for kids to experience a dynamic, life changing relationship with God. The second would be for them to experience both mental and physical well being. And then as we work with them, we want for them to create a life and develop a life that is
mm.
one of independence and also service, knowing that they have an opportunity and even the privilege and responsibility to give back. And all of this is focused on creating children who can live in families and communities that are free from fear and violence. And so through that process, we are doing several different things. And we have four programming areas that we work with. First one being, well, not first, but one of them being, restorative education. A lot of places that we're operating, education is not always accessible to everybody. And so we try and provide free of service education for youth to be able to get that learning process in. One of the things that's unique about education, and even with your own student loans, you can't bankrupt yourself out of those because people understand that once you get an education, it's yours and I can't get it back. And so we really want to encourage people to go and get what they need in order to be successful going forward. And so we also try and get upstream. And so another one of our programming areas is family strengthening, working with the parents, with the caregivers, getting them to recognize what are some of the triggers that could lead to any of that abuse, neglect, or abandonment and stopping that. And then we also do justice advocacy,
Mm.
where we're walking with them. And if they need that kind of support with regards to prosecution, or moving along those lines, we do that as well. And then when necessary, we do provide protective care. We do have some homes that are based on a familial model, not like a long orphanage or anything like that, but smaller groups with parents that are in there to provide that support.
That's incredible, and that all around mindset and philosophy, I think, is maybe what sets your organization apart and really allows
I
y'all to
think
do
so.
that important work. I would love
Definitely.
to dive into, that identity-based aspect of the care that you're providing. Can you, explain a little bit more about what that means for our audience?
Sure. Sure. One of the things that we do is we help the youth that we are serving recognize and remember that what has happened to them doesn't define them. It's not who they are or what they or all they can be. And right. So we have what we call these life declarations of who they are in Christ. And we remind them that they are, their art. They're a masterpiece that was created by God and uniquely knitted in their mother's womb. We talk about the fact that they are clean and what happened was someone else doing that to them. It was not all the names that they choose to sometimes put on themselves are not their identity, right?
Mm.
It really is something that unfortunately someone else has done. And they are chosen by God. They are uniquely children of God. Is another thing that we do, and we walk with them on that. And then we want to remind them that you are powerful. You can speak up. We want to help give you back your voice so that you can use it to speak to the things that happen as you process through your trauma, but also when necessary to remember that you can also speak to the person who offended you and go through the process of being able to actually put them away. And so part of that, and one of the ceremonies that we have is really a special one. After a young person is able to give their testimony, we've worked with the governments of Peru and Guatemala. We're developing this now with Zambia, but we put in what are called forensic testimony rooms. And with this, a child is able to give their testimony one time. It's recorded, it's admissible in court. They have the support of their social worker, their therapist, and their lawyer as they're going through this process. It provides more consistency in the response. That way, it isn't questioned again when they're in court. They don't have to go back to the site, which is what they used to have to do, and basically be re traumatized as they're explaining what happened, or have to be in court again with the person who offended them and speaking to that. And sometimes, unfortunately, that is a relative. It could be an uncle, a brother, even a father. And so it's just a lot of additional trauma that we are able to circumvent by having those testimonial rooms. And then we celebrate that because they've used their voice. They've been able to identify that that happened, but it's not who I am. It doesn't define me. And I'm able to now begin to process and move through that. So that identity based trauma informed care is holistic in nature. And that's where we're also speaking to the educational components, the physical components, spiritual and emotional components of who this person
Mm.
is, holistic service and care for that individual. And that's really what drives the work that we do. And I feel comfortable in saying that we are at tip of the spear on this. A lot of people will provide different aspects, but we don't know of someone else right now. And I'm not saying no one else is doing it, but we're not aware of other people who provide this multifaceted, holistic approach to the work that we do.
It sounds like y'all are really providing a service for the youth of the globe.
Yes, definitely.
I would love to dive into. I know that you've been with Kids Alive
Hmm.
for a multitude of years and also in different capacities.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about your background, one in the nonprofit space, and then also your journey within Kids Alive International as well.
Sure. My first kind of step into nonprofits was, ooh, I just did the math. This is about 30 years ago, a little over 30 years ago, when I was at Wheaton College. That's where I got my undergrad and doing some work there with really just helping people process through multicultural challenges and issues in there. And then I became the program director for an organization started by a trader in Chicago called Urban Options. And he just wanted to provide options for kids who lived on the west side of Chicago. There's different ways of getting out of the community and being able to go to college, really.
Mm.
Bringing crew, because he went to Penn State, bringing crew to the west side of Chicago. So kids were getting scholarships. There's actually a really cool documentary on it with one of the guys that went through Asher, and he's done a phenomenal job. And so that's where I first started to really understand this world. And I always thought I was going to be in corporate America, but the Lord had different plans. And so I stepped into this and then started to teach for a little bit on the West Side and doing some other things around there. And then got the opportunity to go and live overseas. And that really kind of formulated my understanding of the shrinking global cosmos. As we continue to interact, we get smaller and we start to know more people, and 6 degrees of separation becomes 3.7 or whatever, right? And so part of it was just being able to come back. And when I was in Wheaton again, I started to go to a church, and one of the board members from Kids Alive attended that church. And we had come off the field serving in Jerusalem for a few years, but we're itching to go back overseas. And so we went on a mission trip with them down to the Kids Alive operations in the DR and Dominican Republic. And while they were going through that process, because of some of the consultation I'd done with schools, I started to work with them and moving from half day kind of situation. The DR was starting to move from half day school to full day operation. And so I was training the leaders on how to make that transition. How do you go from providing educational support to actually delivering the education? And that was my first foray with Kids Alive back in 2014. And we stayed in contact over the years. We started had a discussion about me possibly moving to be a country director in 2017, I think it was, for Lebanon because of my Middle East background. And then in 2019, I came onto the board, international board for Kids Alive. And it was amazing to me because we were doing so much more than some of the other organizations that I worked with that are in this OVC, orphan and vulnerable children space, and really just providing the holistic care. But we were, real talk, we were forming our identity, right? We were doing several different things, but not really having a unique kind of niche. And over the years, we continue to refine that niche. And then just in 2024, I got approached by another one of these organizations that would result in me having to step off the board and away from Kids Alive. And after some discussion, we were able to create this position for me to kind of cover the East Coast. And so I support those who have chosen to align with us, walk with us, and to give to us in a generous fashion. So that's what I do now as a regional director of development for Kids Alive.
I would love to hear your thoughts on what was it like transitioning from kind of a doer and being more in a like an executive position, kind of boots on the
Hmm.
ground for Kids Alive to more the board perspective. What are some
And then
lessons
back
that you
again.
think and we're back again, exactly. And then what are some like lessons or advice you would maybe give to your counterpart uh, from that other perspective?
Okay. As a board member, I'm going to encourage and challenge you to go and see the work that your organization's doing. I had heard of it, and what we did, and it had been so many years back in 2014 since I'd seen it. So many things had changed in that time frame. You can read a report, you can look at numbers, you can hear stories until you shake hands, hug shoulders, listen to the little baby explaining or the young child explaining the difference in their lives because of the work you're doing. You don't fully appreciate what's happening. And then when you sit with your fellow or with the staff and leaders that are in country and you hear their challenges, you understand how important it is for us to be very strategic with the budget. You understand how important it is for you to play your role as a nonprofit board member in helping to raise funds, to helping to raise awareness, and to really partnering and not just rubber stamping or bowing your head, but asking tough questions.
Mhm.
I would encourage you to be part of committees. Make sure your board forms committees that are having direct lines to the other VPs. You don't want to have or a situation where the only point of contact is that CEO. It puts too much pressure on that person, and it also silos communication. So what we've done at Kids Alive is we have committees that are directly connected to each of the SVPs, and then the chair and the board and the CEO, they meet on a regular basis. We have a leadership kind of committee as well. But then I used to be over the development department committee when I was on the board, and so I'd have direct conversations with the VP of development. That way, there's a broader knowledge base. It's less chance of things getting siloed or filtered that don't need to be, either from the board down to the rest of the people or from the rest of the team up to the board. It's a lot more open in communication, and I think that's healthy. And so I would definitely encourage your board members to be thinking, how do I go and see, and how am I making certain that there aren't silos here? And really, it's a protection for the CEO or executive director as well as it is for the board. And it's something that, because it might be challenging, might be expensive, especially if you're an international board, to go and see what's happening in the other countries, but it has revolutionized my understanding of what we do by going and seeing the work and being involved in the trenches. And that leads us to the second half. Being on the ground and seeing what we do, it makes me be able to have conversations with, I work mostly with major donors, and I can start to speak with them about vision, what I understand from what we were trying to do as a board member, what I see on the ground, and then what the potential is.
Mhm.
And being able to really have conversations at that next level to go beyond, a 5,000, 10,000, even $25,000 gift, which are all significant. Please don't change. I mean, take that for nothing. But when I can have someone start to think about a 3-year commitment at 50 grand, a 2-year commitment at 100 grand each year, that's significant, and that is a exponential kind of step that we can take. The 25s and 50s will help us continue to move, no doubt about it. The fives help us continue to move. Injections of significant capital allow us to really pursue and chase
Mhm.
after a dream that is going to bring a revolutionary step in work and the service that we provide. So those are the things I would say as a board member. Go and see what's going on, really get involved, and it'll allow you to come back and speak differently about what's happening, to make you look at the numbers differently that are on the paper. And then as someone who's serving and you're in the field and you're doing whatever, listen to those stories and become someone who can champion the work you're doing. Not just because this is my job, but
Yeah.
because you know that lives are being impacted by the work you're doing.
And, it really makes me excited to learn what are y'all moving towards, as you in your role are working on with these capital influxes. What is
Hmm.
that gonna be going toward? What's the visions for
Sure.
the organization?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's been very encouraging and exciting to me is just the ridiculous potential each one of our sites has. And being on the ground and seeing it and seeing just the space that's there, the need that's there, the desire of the people that we're working with, the beneficiaries and stakeholders that are in country, there's so much potential of what we could do with strategic funds and plans. And we're developing those and we're looking
Mm.
for people. One of the things that I'm very focused on is how do you steward your time? And not just a second ticking on the clock, but your talent, your influence, your money, and your energy. How are you stewarding that? And I'm working right now with someone who is an award-winning architect of the state that he's in. And I said, in both of our sites, both in Kenya and Zambia, we have amazing potential, as been saying. And there's a chance for us to be able to lay out what's going on that can be scalable for years to come. But my dad's an architect, and I know this. And I said, I'd love for you to come and use your experience and expertise to create a master plan. What buildings need to go where? What time do they need to come? What's the structure going to be? What's the scalability for each one of these things?
Mhm.
How do we make certain that this building could easily be 3 stories? Make sure that when we build it the first time, we put the filters down deeper so they can hold this. And so I remember talking to him, he goes, I would love to do that. That's what I do. It excites me. I'm like, I know. So please continue to think about what time it happened. So I'm not even asking him right now for a donation. I'm asking him for his expertise, his talent, right? Because that, I believe, is how you get people to really become part of the work you're doing. If you just want to have a transaction with someone, then you go and you ask them and they have capacity and boom. But if you want someone to be a partner with you, to really walk with you when things
Mm.
get hard, they still choose to engage with you. You have to build a relationship. You have to be able to meet them where they are. You have to be able to think through what's important to them as well. So that when we have this dialogue, we have this conversation, they're thinking with me as a thought partner, not just a funder. They're not an ATM. None of them are. And when they get treated as such, they'll cut you off, right? But if they're part of our growth and development, they'll continue to dream with us. They'll bring other people who have other areas of expertise who will come, and you'll be amazed at kind of funding that can happen. So as we look to the expansion, and also while we're expanding, we're refining. I know that sounds unique, but we're trying to serve more people, but we're very clear about how we're going to serve them, right? And I think that's important is you're always looking for growth opportunities that exist, but make certain that what you're bringing to the market, for lack of a better word,
Mhm.
is something you know very well. And we understand identity-based trauma-informed care very well. And as a result, we're able to bring that with a clarity, with a conviction, with an expertise that allows us to be, as Corby, our CEO, says, so good we can't be ignored. So although we're overtly Christian, we don't hide from that whatsoever. We try to present everything with love, don't discriminate when it comes to services. The majority of people that we're serving in Lebanon are Syrian refugees, and most of them are Muslim, right? A lot of the Lebanese that we're serving are also Muslims. We're not pushing away from that. We're embracing the opportunity to meet people where they are, especially around traumas. Refining that model, getting more involved with the schools, and really, we have these things called hope centers, which are kind of like our after school supports for that. But through that, we are also serving teachers and families and going further upstream. That's really our goal: is how do we get further up so that by the
Prevent it from ever
time, so
happening.
these things, it never happens. Exactly. Exactly. So that's what we're really leaning into with Capital. We just had a huge match that we just completed, actually earlier than we ever had. $500,000 match towards our education initiatives. So we're building out a lot of things around education, which again puts people in a safe space. There's more eyes on them.
Mm.
They have, we provide meals at all of our schools. So they're getting food on a regular basis as well as the education. We provide dental care, medical care. So they're getting the things that they wouldn't normally or get access to. We're providing through our school
Mm.
initiative. So those are the things that we're trying to lean into. And again, so many people have been saying, hey, your approach is unique. How do we deal with that? And one of the things that was great is Judge Rosemary Aquilina actually came down and saw our work in Guatemala and has done an interview and kind of spoken to it and saying, look, I've been all around. And Judge Rosemary Aquilina, just to give you some context, she was the presiding judge of the Larry Nasser case, the guy who had assaulted a lot of the gymnasts, U.S. gymnasts. And so
Mm.
she understands what sexual abuse looks like and how people have tried to treat it over the years. And she straight up said, I've never seen this anywhere else. And the holistic approach that you have truly are going to help these girls heal. And so we've tried to get very, very good at the work we're doing so that we can move with knowledge, with a confidence, almost a swagger. I don't want to say not pride, but we're good at what we do. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and say that we're not. We are. And other people who aren't part of us recognize that. And the funding that we get, we are being very good stewards with. We're trying to strategically reallocate those funds so that we can continue to move things ahead and get them to where they need to be.
And there's so much I want to dive into about that. The first thing
Okay.
I want to call out, sounded like in terms of building people that are ready to go and support your mission, looking and seeing where their talents lie, and
Yeah.
aligning that with the work and the need that you have with your organization has one
Yes.
provided that value and expertise they had, but it also sounds like it then crafts that relationship that turns into a long term sustainable donor base as well. Correct?
Yes. Definitely. I have people on my list who have been, and obviously I've not been with them that long, but you go back and look at their history. They've been given to us for 35,
Mm,
40, 47. I remember one woman said, I remember when my mom started writing the check to you in 1961. And that's the kind of longevity that comes from one, doing good work, but two, building relationships and really taking the time to hear where they are, to listen to where they are, to invite them to be part of a more strategic initiative. You know, as you're thinking through, if you have, for example, if we're thinking of doing something in medicine, if we have doctors on our list, why wouldn't we talk with them and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? It invites them to be part of the conversation, part of the solution. And then we're like, hey, we want to roll that out. Would you be willing to come on a vision trip with us to take a look? They'll come, they'll see it, they can give their expertise, but now they're also bought into its success, right? So they want to see it come to fruition. They're going to invite their other friends, like, hey, I'm involved in this. I think you guys should be too. But it comes from you being willing to say, hey, look, we want to do this. You have expertise in this area. Can you help us? Rather than, a lot of time people will build out a program and then try and find funding for it. And we've seen, and I would highly recommend that is hard because you now have to find someone who believes in the vision you've created rather than saying, hey, look, we see that the need here, and this is again, charity's not really, or I should say, development, community development, international development is not about charity coming down so much as a community rising up, right? And so to do that, go and assess, sit, listen, learn, understand,
mm.
and then come back to where there are resources to meet that need. Right. You now have a very clear picture of what the need is that you feel called, uniquely gifted to try and address. So, with that, you come back to your network, to people who you know, and say, look, this is what we see as a need. What are some ways you think we could accomplish that? We're very good at this and this, but you have expertise in this area. What are some things we need to think through? What are things that you give advice on? Who else do we need to talk to? And now you know the need, you know what you do well, but they give some advice and wisdom, for lack of a better word, as to how to craft the programming you're doing. That, again, you don't want to cow to just whatever the donor wants to do. But if you invite them, you get to also collaborate and say, hey, look, but we need to be careful that we don't boom. So now you can help temper their excitement as well. But when it's done, they're fully vested with you. They want to see this succeed. They want to be part of meeting that need, being a solution. And that I think is how you get lifelong supporters. You turn them from donors into partners, and you get other people in your network because they go and say, hey, look, I'm involved or this is happening. You need to come see it. And again, come and see. A lot of these nonprofits are doing amazing work. Many of them don't have a platform or don't have the capacity yet to get people to come and look. And so that's something I try and do is to amplify other nonprofits and help people steward what they've been entrusted with to grow those other nonprofits also.
And it sounds like such an important aspect of the strategic vision that also allows this to happen is identifying and really attacking that niche that you brought up. I would love if you could explore, as kind of a final note for the show,
Mhm.
how you would recommend other nonprofit leaders running and leading organizations really identify that niche and fully dive into that in terms of their strategy.
Okay, my sophomore year of college, I was in a management class, and because I was international business major. We were reading through Stephen Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, right?
Mm,
And habit number 5 is seek first to understand before you try to be understood. And that saved me and served me really well when I was in Jerusalem. I'd run a school before as a principal, but I never run a school in Jerusalem. And so I would always sit and listen and talk with different people who had been at the school for years, who are now teachers or other administrators, whatever, and say, help me understand. And I think that phrase right there ties into, seek first to understand before you try to be understood. And you just say, look, I don't know, but I want to know. And I'm trusting that you will help me figure it out. Help me understand. If you take that approach, when you see a problem, see a challenge, see an opportunity in a neighborhood to go or a community, sit with the leaders, what we call people of peace in the work that we do, and say, hey, I see this. Help me understand what's happening as a result of this. What have people done before to try and address this? What are things that you guys be open to happening now to address this? And then after you hear all of that and you fully understand, you say, one thing I've seen before, or have you guys thought about if it hasn't been mentioned? And then you continue the dialogue, but then you get a very clear picture of that need. And then you come back and you find people who you say, hey, you have expertise in this. This is what they're saying they're needing and what they're saying. What are your thoughts? And again, help me understand what you need to feel like this is a place you want to invest because you've worked hard, usually to acquire the money that you have. And so you're not just going to throw it away. So let me make certain you're part of what we're trying to do to formulate a response to this need. And then you have that conversation. So it's really about taking the time to understand what the true need is, what is already happening there, what might be missing, and how can you help fill that need. It's not coming in like, oh, that's the problem. Here's the solution. You don't know. You don't know if they've tried it already and culturally it won't work or legally it won't work or whatever else, it won't work there. That's why you sit and you listen, take time to understand. You save yourself a lot of frustration. You honor the people who were there already doing work. You also are creating things that will probably be adopted and ownership will come from the community, which will give it a much better shot of being sustainable going forward. Because I've been involved with different organizations that got kicked out of the country. Heck, when I was in Jerusalem, I was given 10 days to leave the country when I was doing work that was there, right? So I know what it's like that you can have all these plans, set everything up, but if it's your idea and you haven't transferred ownership, or help to establish ownership when you're gone, so is it. That's why it's so important. Take the time, understand what the need is, who's already working in there, and how you can come alongside to equip them with what they need so they can do what they have to. My whole concept, I know without a shadow of a doubt that I've been called to connect the world's needs with the world's resources. And as a follower of Christ, I believe that I want to get you everything you need to do everything God wants. And so if you listen to that, that's not about me, right? It's connecting the world's needs and world's resources and getting you what you need to do everything God wants. Has to do with everybody else that's out there. You have been entrusted with time, influence, money, and energy that you need to strategically reallocate. And for me, it's for Christ and his kingdom. For others, it's just so we see the imago Dei, the image of God. The people are uniquely created. How are we better able to serve them? And I think that happens by stopping and saying, how can I help? And will you help me understand?
Amazing. Shane, thank you for coming on the show and
Absolute
sharing more
pleasure.
about the work that you're doing, your philosophies around leadership, and the incredible, care that you're providing for the youth across the globe. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming on today.
absolute pleasure. Thank you, Grayson. Wish you guys the best.